But an unexpected death is one where you look round and you go, there's no good reason why this person should have died at this time, and so we need to.
For more than 2 decades, the world has lived with one version of events: a car crash in a Paris tunnel, a beloved princess gone too soon. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the truth about what happened to Princess Diana on that fateful night has been quietly hidden, piece by piece, behind official reports, blurred footage, and questions that were never fully answered? The silence around her death has never sat right with millions. Now, years later, a former top investigator has allegedly broken his silence, and what he reveals changes everything. From mysterious security footage to a vanishing white car, from questionable decisions made by emergency responders to disturbing contradictions in the official inquest, the details you're about to hear may force you to rethink everything you thought you knew. This isn't just about a car crash. It's about power, secrecy, and a woman whose life captivated the world. Was it really just an accident, or something far more unsettling? Stick with us, because what you're about to hear might just be the piece of the puzzle that was missing all along. And before we dive into these twists and revelations, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a story that challenges the official narrative and dares to ask the questions others won't. Because this is where the truth begins. Paris glowed under its golden lights, unaware that history was about to fracture forever. Inside the Ritz Hotel, the atmosphere felt unusually quiet. Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed appeared at ease, walking hand in hand through the ornate corridors. Security footage captured them sharing soft glances, calm voices, and even smiles. To anyone watching, it looked like just another elegant evening in the City of Light. But beneath that surface calm, something was beginning to shift. Earlier plans had already been scrapped. A private dinner at an upscale restaurant was abruptly canceled due to a massive crowd of paparazzi swarming the entrances. Outside the hotel, flashing cameras lit up the night like a strobe. It wasn't just celebrity curiosity anymore. It was chaos in the making. Then came a quiet, seemingly offhand decision. Skip the restaurant, stay in, eat at the hotel. But even that plan unraveled. As the noise outside grew louder and the swarm of photographers refused to thin, Dodi reportedly leaned in and told a staff member, in a low and serious voice, "Let's go to my apartment." A subtle change in course, but one that would ripple through every moment that followed. At the center of this decision was a man whose role that night remained steeped in mystery. Henri Paul, officially off duty, yet suddenly back in charge of security. No one could explain where he had been for several hours before reappearing. And even stranger, he looked completely composed, calm, confident, even cheerful. Not the demeanor of someone about to orchestrate a high-stakes exit for the most hunted woman in the world. Staff began moving quickly. Quiet glances, swift whispers, drivers repositioned, plans reshuffled. It was as if a silent alarm had been triggered behind the scenes. And yet, Diana, smiling and relaxed, appeared blissfully unaware of the urgency swirling around her. No fear on her face, no sign of tension, just trust. Trust in the people around her. Trust in the plan being formed without her full knowledge. And that plan was already in motion. As the pressure outside the Ritz intensified, what began as a last-minute idea transformed into a calculated operation. The mission: get Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed out safely, quietly, and without drawing the bloodthirsty eyes of the press. But what followed didn't feel like standard security protocol. It felt like improvisation under pressure, or worse, a plan laced with cracks from the very start. It began with a whisper. Dodi, speaking only to the night manager, mentioned heading to his apartment near the Arc de Triomphe. Just a few people were brought into the loop. Henri Paul was one of them. With no official explanation, he now found himself behind the wheel. Staff who saw him said he looked calm, maybe too calm. Observers claimed he carried himself like a man with a plan. But what kind of plan? To outwit the relentless paparazzi, the team came up with a risky diversion. 3 identical black Mercedes sedans were pulled into position. The goal was confusion decoy vehicles that would scatter the photographers in the wrong direction. If just one car could slip through unnoticed, it would work. The brilliance of the setup depended on perfect timing. One wrong move, and the chase would be on. Henri Paul would drive. Diana's bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, would sit in the front passenger seat. Diana and Dodie would be tucked away in the back, shielded by tinted windows and darkness. One of the decoy vehicles would leave from the front, just as paparazzi surged. The real escape would happen out back, quiet and quick. Security footage shows Henri Paul stepping out in a Place Vendôme, speaking briefly with a few photographers, as if nothing was unusual. Then, astonishingly, he returns inside and takes a sip from the bar, just a casual drink, moments before leading what should have been a high-security escort. No nerves, no tension, just a man who either knew exactly what he was doing or didn't realize the magnitude of what was unfolding. Upstairs, Diana waved at Paul, her demeanor still light and cheerful. The group moved to the service elevator, descending into the shadows of the Ritz's rear exit. It was nearly midnight. In just a few minutes, the black Mercedes carrying Diana, Dodie, and Trevor Rees-Jones would roll out onto the streets of Paris, quietly slipping through the back entrance, unaware that the plan, however well-intended, was about to unravel faster than anyone could have imagined. Just past midnight, the black Mercedes slipped out the back of the Ritz Hotel. The decoy cars had done their job, momentarily. Cameras flashed at the front entrance as the wrong vehicle rolled forward. For a few precious seconds, it looked like the escape plan had worked. The real car, with Diana, Dodie, Henri Paul, and Trevor Rees-Jones inside, vanished into the Paris night. But the quiet didn't last. A sharp voice broke through the crowd. "They've gone out the back." It was all it took. Photographers spun around, motorbikes roared to life, and within moments, the chase was on. What was supposed to be a discreet departure became a high-speed pursuit through the heart of one of the busiest cities in the world. Witnesses described the black Mercedes as flying through the streets, weaving past traffic with terrifying speed. Henri Paul was driving aggressively, pushing the vehicle beyond safe limits. Later estimates suggested the car was going more than 60 miles per hour on city streets. Trevor Rees-Jones, the only one wearing a seatbelt, sat rigid in the front seat. In the back, Diana and Dodie remained shielded from view, unaware of the exact speed or how close the trailing photographers really were. The route was meant to be short, a quick drive along the Seine to Dodie's apartment. But the area near Place de la Concorde was unexpectedly blocked. Rather than turning off, Paul kept going straight, rerouting toward the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. And that's where everything changed. The Alma tunnel is narrow, curved, and dimly lit, not meant for high-speed travel. It snakes beneath the Paris streets in a long bend, a place where visibility drops and reflexes are tested. Yet the car didn't slow. In fact, it was still accelerating. What happened in the next few seconds remains one of the most fiercely debated mysteries of modern times. The Mercedes entered the tunnel. Witnesses saw a flash, then a screech, then impact. The car struck the 13th pillar, a brutal, immovable concrete support buried deep within the tunnel. The force of the collision mangled the vehicle beyond recognition. Metal twisted, glass shattered. The noise echoed like a bomb going off beneath the city. Screams followed. Skid marks streaked the pavement. Paparazzi arrived within seconds, cameras still in hand, lenses raised not to help, but to capture. Some froze. Others snapped photos. Few stepped forward to offer aid. What caused the crash? Was it simply speed and panic? Or had something, or someone, played a role in pushing that Mercedes to its deadly fate? The wreckage suggested more than just driver error. And soon, investigators would find a clue that would explode the narrative and ignite decades of suspicion. Amid the crumpled wreckage of the black Mercedes and the blinding flashes of paparazzi cameras, investigators found something unexpected. Embedded in the twisted metal, along the scraped side of the vehicle, were flecks of white paint. Tiny fragments, almost overlooked, but they told a different story, one that pointed to another car. Traces of a white Fiat Uno. It wasn't just the paint. Bits of a taillight, shattered and scattered near the impact site, matched the design of a Fiat model that hadn't been manufactured in years. Scratches along the passenger side of the Mercedes suggested more than a passing brush. There had been contact, significant contact, enough to force a swerve, enough to change the trajectory of the vehicle forever. But there was a problem. No one had seen it, not clearly. No photos, no license plate, no confirmed driver. Just a ghost of a car vanishing into the night. Then came a name, James Ananson, a French photojournalist with a history of shadowing royal figures. A man known to be obsessed with Diana. He denied everything, claimed he was nowhere near Paris that night. But suspicions quickly mounted. His white Fiat Uno was later found burned, abandoned. The timing? Suspicious. The condition? Damaged, with marks eerily similar to what investigators believed they would find on a car involved in the Alma crash. Still, there was no smoking gun, no eyewitness testimony placing Ananson at the scene, no concrete proof he was behind the wheel that night. Just coincidence, or was it? Years later, even darker rumors would emerge. Some whispered that Andanson's death, reportedly a suicide, was far from straightforward. He had been found locked in a car, surrounded by gasoline, with signs that didn't quite add up. The flames erased evidence. The questions survived. And what about the Fiat itself? How does a vehicle make contact with a high-profile, speeding Mercedes in the heart of Paris, a city crawling with reporters, and disappear without a single clear witness? No traffic cameras caught it. No photographers captured a usable shot. In a moment where the world's eyes were focused, one car escaped all notice. It was this white Fiat Uno that cracked open the official story. Because if there was another car, then Diana's death wasn't just the result of reckless driving or paparazzi pressure. It might have been triggered, or at the very least, shaped by something far more deliberate. And yet, even with this bombshell clue, the mystery only deepened. Because while investigators could trace the fragments, they couldn't trace the full truth. The Fiat Uno became a symbol, not just of what might have happened in that tunnel, but of everything that would go unanswered in the years to come. And the questions were only just beginning. The moment the Mercedes struck the 13th pillar, time became both critical and confusing. Witnesses reported that the first photographers on the scene hesitated, some continuing to snap pictures instead of rushing to help. The site was chaotic, twisted metal, shattered glass, and the faint, muffled sound of movement from inside the wreckage. Then, out of nowhere, a passing doctor, a man who had nothing to do with the paparazzi or the palace, stopped his car and ran toward the scene. He tried to provide aid, but even he quickly realized the situation was far beyond what a single person could handle. Calls for help went out, but what happened next still raises uncomfortable questions. Emergency services arrived minutes later. Yet instead of rushing Diana straight to the nearest hospital, which was less than 10 minutes away, French protocol dictated something else. Treat the injuries at the scene first. Paramedics believed stabilizing her before transport would give her the best chance of survival. But as they worked under the dim light of the tunnel, precious minutes ticked away. This decision would become one of the most controversial elements of that night. Could those lost minutes have made the difference between life and death? British medical experts later argued that in the UK and in many other countries, emergency responders would have prioritized speed, rushing her to a trauma unit instead of focusing on prolonged on-site treatment. The drive to the hospital, which should have taken less than 10 minutes, stretched into over 40 minutes due to stops, slow maneuvers, and repeated attempts to keep Diana stable. To the world, this delay looked unthinkable. Every second felt like a lifetime, and with each passing moment, the chance of survival slipped further away. And then there was another detail, one that made the delay even harder to understand. Reports claimed that Diana was conscious at certain points after the crash, even speaking faintly. She was alive, fighting, and perhaps aware of the chaos around her. Yet as medical teams worked inside that tunnel, the paparazzi outside were still snapping photos. Some of those images would later be sold, a fact that sparked global outrage. The slow medical response wasn't just a matter of protocol. It was a decision that became part of the controversy surrounding Diana's final moments. Because as the world would soon learn, this was not the last questionable choice made that night. The questions were multiplying, and the investigation was about to uncover even more inconsistencies. In the days following Princess Diana's death, the world stood still, not just in mourning, but in disbelief. People didn't just want answers. They needed them. But as time passed, answers proved hard to come by. What began as a tragic accident quickly started to look like a mystery deliberately wrapped in silence. The French authorities launched an initial investigation, but it was slow, methodical, and to many, strangely subdued. Years went by with little progress. It wasn't until nearly a decade later that Britain launched its own full-scale inquiry, known as the inquest, a process that would peel back the layers of that night and reveal more questions than anyone expected. From the start, things didn't line up. Security footage from the Ritz Hotel showed Henri Paul walking steadily, tying his shoes, speaking clearly, with no visible signs of intoxication. Yet toxicology reports claimed his blood alcohol level was dangerously high. Could someone appear that sober while allegedly over the legal limit by 3 times? Medical experts were split, and the contradiction cast a long shadow over the credibility of the reports. Then came the issue of the missing footage. The Ritz was covered in security cameras. So was the surrounding area. And yet, key segments from that night, moments when the car should have been captured entering the tunnel or showing who was near the vehicle in its final minutes, were missing. Gone. No explanation. No technical failure ever confirmed. Just an eerie absence where crucial clarity should have existed. And the Alma tunnel itself? Reopened within hours of the crash. Cleaned. Cleared. As if nothing had happened. Forensic experts were stunned. A crash site involving a member of the royal family. And it was scrubbed clean before all evidence could be properly reviewed? The haste felt suspicious. The message, intentional or not, was chilling. Move on. During the inquest, Henri Paul's unexplained disappearance before reappearing at the hotel raised new red flags. Where had he gone? Who had he spoken to? Why did someone off duty suddenly reassume control of such a critical operation? And still, the timeline of events seemed fuzzy, edited, uncertain, too conveniently vague in all the wrong places. Even those closest to Diana were stunned. Prince William and Prince Harry, still grieving the loss of their mother, submitted letters to the court asking for a full, detailed investigation, not to point fingers, but to uncover the truth. What they wanted was simple transparency. What they got was a story increasingly clouded by inconsistencies and incomplete data. The more the court examined the night's events, the more it became clear. This wasn't a clean line of cause and effect. This was a mosaic of confusion, broken pieces, missing corners, and a picture that didn't quite come together. And what came next would only deepen the mystery, because the contradictions didn't end with Henri Paul or the missing footage. They reached all the way to the top. As the inquest widened, so did its scope, stretching far beyond forensic data and crash site analysis. The courtroom became a crossroads for powerful forces, conflicting interests, and deeply personal emotions. Because this wasn't just about a car crash anymore. It was about the monarchy, the media, and a global icon whose death still didn't make sense. In a move that stunned many, letters written by Prince William and Prince Harry were introduced into the proceedings. They didn't ask for privilege. They didn't seek special treatment. Instead, the letters were quiet, dignified, and direct. The princes asked only for thoroughness, a real investigation, one that left no stone unturned. Not as royals, but as sons who had lost their mother under circumstances that never quite felt right. But even as the inquest pressed forward, a growing list of conflicting testimonies made the truth harder to pin down. Witnesses from the Ritz Hotel gave accounts of last-minute changes in security protocols, unexplained orders, and hurried adjustments that no one seemed able to trace back to a clear decision-maker. Who exactly orchestrated the escape plan? And why was Henri Paul, an off-duty staffer, handed such responsibility? Then came the controversy surrounding Lord John Stevens, the former police commissioner who led the British investigation known as Operation Paget. During a private meeting with Henri Paul's grieving parents, Stevens allegedly assured them that their son would not be blamed. But weeks later, the official report publicly pinned much of the fault on Paul, citing intoxication and reckless behavior as the primary cause of the crash. Why the sudden shift? Had new evidence emerged in the meantime? Or was it a case of saying one thing in private to avoid backlash, while releasing a different narrative in the media to protect larger institutions? The contradiction didn't sit well with the public. It made people question whether the investigation was truly impartial or if the truth had been shaped to fit a politically convenient outcome. Expert witnesses began to take the stand, driving analysts, automotive engineers, security professionals, and their conclusions rarely aligned. Some pointed out flaws in the Mercedes steering and braking systems, arguing that the vehicle may have suffered a mechanical failure. Others dismissed that theory entirely, saying the crash was purely a result of excessive speed and driver error. Still, the car had been carrying extra weight in the back. Could that have affected its balance and handling? One expert claimed it might have skewed the car's center of gravity, making it more vulnerable in a sharp curve like the one in the Alma Tunnel. Another insisted that a driver with Paul's supposed blood alcohol level couldn't have navigated a city as complex as Paris with such precision, unless, of course, the toxicology results had been somehow wrong. And then came the spotlight on the paparazzi. Some witnesses described a frenzy, motorbikes swerving dangerously close, camera flashes blinding the driver, chaos in every direction. Others insisted the photographers were being unfairly demonized, that they were trailing the car, not forcing it off the road. The lines blurred, responsibility scattered, and still, no clear consensus emerged. Piece by piece, the inquest dismantled the neat, simple version of events the world had been told for years. It didn't offer closure. It offered doubt, loud, complicated, and impossible to ignore. And just when it seemed the story couldn't get any more tangled, the narrative took yet another turn. One that raised a chilling question. Was Diana on the verge of revealing something the world was never supposed to hear? As the inquest dragged on and the testimonies grew more tangled, a darker undercurrent began to take hold. A possibility that chilled investigators, stunned the public, and kept conspiracy theories alive for decades. What if this wasn't just a tragic accident? What if someone had something to hide? Whispers of a cover-up weren't new. They had circulated almost from the moment news of the crash broke. But now, they were taking shape piece by piece with patterns too eerie to ignore. Why were key security tapes missing? Why had the Alma Tunnel been reopened to traffic so quickly before all forensic evidence could be thoroughly documented? Why were certain witnesses dismissed while others were never interviewed at all? And then came rumors that Diana herself had been planning to go public with something huge. Some close to her claimed she had written letters expressing fear for her safety. In one, reportedly given to her butler, Diana allegedly wrote that someone was planning an accident involving her car. Was it paranoia or premonition? Tabloid headlines and media outlets seized on another explosive possibility. Was Diana pregnant? Was she about to announce an engagement to Dodi Fayed, something that would have shaken the monarchy to its core? Medical records from the post-mortem found no evidence of pregnancy, and Diana's close friends denied she ever mentioned it. But like many things in this case, the rumor refused to die. It didn't need confirmation to spread. It only needed a vacuum, and the inquest had left plenty. Investigators also examined the timeline of the crash site. Some eyewitnesses claimed they saw other vehicles in or near the tunnel just before the accident, accounts that were either downplayed or discarded in the official reports. Meanwhile, the white Fiat Uno remained a ghost. Its driver, never identified. Its role in the crash, never fully explained. Could such a critical clue really vanish in a city crawling with press? Then there were the odd coincidences surrounding the key players. Henri Paul's movements in the hours before the crash remained mysterious. His blood samples were allegedly taken under questionable conditions. Some claim the samples tested didn't even match his known blood type, a claim hotly contested but never fully disproven. And what about James Ananson, the photographer linked to the suspicious Fiat. His own death, years later, was ruled a suicide, found in a burned car under circumstances that raised more eyebrows than answers. Could have been a coincidence? Or was a loose end tied off? With each new revelation, the picture became less about facts and more about the absence of them. Even the most basic expectations of transparency seemed to falter. Diana's supporters questioned why the royal family remained silent for so long after the crash. Why hadn't they pushed for an independent investigation immediately? Why had so many people, from hotel staff to high-ranking officials, either altered their stories, disappeared from view, or avoided the public eye altogether? What began as a demand for justice had evolved into something much deeper, a search for truth in a maze of shadows. And when the official verdict finally arrived, it didn't feel like an answer. It felt like a compromise, a legal conclusion trying to satisfy too many questions with too little evidence. The crash was labeled a result of grossly negligent driving by Henri Paul, fueled by alcohol and paparazzi pressure. But to millions around the world, that verdict felt hollow, incomplete, too neat for a story that was anything but. Because when you strip away the names, the titles, and the institutions, one truth remains. A woman died in a way that still doesn't make sense. And that night in the Alma Tunnel continues to haunt history. Not just because of what happened, but because of what may have been kept hidden. The story of Princess Diana's death is not just a tragedy, it's a riddle. One filled with missing footage, vanishing cars, conflicting testimonies, and questions that still echo across generations. For years, the public was told it was a tragic accident. But the deeper we look, the harder that becomes to accept at face value. Why did it take so long to get her to the hospital? Why were critical moments left unrecorded? Why did the official narrative shift so many times depending on who was watching? And above all, who was driving that mysterious white Fiat Uno? And why was it never found? We may never know the full truth about what happened in the Alma Tunnel that night. But one thing is certain, this wasn't a simple crash story. It was the sudden, violent end to a life that meant something to millions, and the unanswered questions surrounding it have only deepened her legacy. For some, this case is closed. But for others, for those who still feel that something doesn't sit right, it remains an open wound. A cold case wrapped in warm tributes. A public mystery buried beneath layers of silence and speculation. So now we turn to you. What do you think really happened that night in Paris? Was it just a tragic series of coincidences, or is there more to this story than we've been told? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters, because keeping the conversation alive is the only way we keep the truth from fading. And if you're drawn to the real-life mysteries the world still whispers about, the ones buried in headlines, hidden in archives, and hanging in the air unanswered, then don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe now, and be the first to uncover what they didn't want us to find out. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.